There are two kinds of living things on Earth: plants and everything else. Plants make their own food from sunlight, photosynthesis. Animals can't. We have to eat to survive. That's the most basic rule in biology. Except there's an animal that broke it. Off the eastern coast of the United States lives a bright green sea slug, about an inch long, that hasn't eaten in 6 months. Not because it's starving, but because it doesn't need to. This is Elysia chlorotica, the animal that learned how to photosynthesize. And what scientists discovered about how it does this is forcing us to rethink genetics, evolution, and the limits of life itself. The first scientists to study Elysia chlorotica weren't looking for anything revolutionary. In the 1970s, marine biologists along the Atlantic coast noticed these small green sea slugs living in shallow tidal pools, feeding on a specific type of algae called Vaucheria litoria. Typical herbivore behavior, nothing unusual. But then someone noticed something odd. Young sea slugs, freshly hatched, were brownish, almost translucent, normal animal coloring. But adult slugs, bright, vibrant green, like a leaf, like they'd been dipped in chlorophyll. At first, researchers assumed the slugs were just storing algae in their bodies. Some animals do this. Sea anemones keep algae for a symbiotic relationship. But when they looked closer, they found something impossible. The algae was gone, not living inside the slug, not in its gut. Gone. But the chloroplasts, the tiny green structures inside plant cells that perform photosynthesis, were still there. Thousands of them, embedded in the cells lining the slug's digestive system, just functioning on their own, inside an animal. In the 1990s, researcher Mary Rumpho at the University of Maine decided to test something crazy. She took adult slugs, ones that had fed on algae and turned green, and isolated them. No food, no algae, just water and light. And she waited. Weeks passed, then months. The slugs didn't eat, didn't hunt, didn't die. They just basked in the light, like houseplants on a windowsill. For 6 months, some slugs survived with zero food, just sunlight. An animal photosynthesizing. Science had found something that shouldn't exist. Let me explain what's happening here, because it's genuinely one of the strangest things in biology. When a young Elysia chlorotica feeds on Vaucheria algae, it doesn't just digest it, it's selective. The slug's digestive system punctures the algae cells and sucks out the contents. But instead of breaking down the chloroplasts, the green photosynthesis machines, it preserves them intact, functional. These chloroplasts are then transported into the cells lining the slug's gut. And here's where it gets weird. The slug's body accepts them. In most animals, foreign cells trigger an immune response. Your body would attack and destroy plant material. That's how immune systems work. But Elysia doesn't. It integrates the chloroplasts into its own cells, thousands of them, creating a living solar panel inside its body. And then, impossibly, those chloroplasts keep working for months. Chloroplasts are supposed to need constant maintenance from the plant cell's nucleus. They require specific proteins encoded by plant genes to function and repair themselves. Once separated from the plant, they should die within days, maybe weeks. But in Elysia, they last for 6 to 9 months, sometimes longer. The slug doesn't eat. It just spreads its body out wide and flat like a leaf to maximize surface area. And it photosynthesizes. carbon dioxide plus water plus sunlight equals glucose and oxygen, exactly like a plant. The slug has become a solar-powered animal. But here's the question that haunted scientists for decades. How? How does the slug keep the chloroplasts alive without the plant's genetic machinery? How does it produce the proteins they need? The answer, when it finally came, was even more shocking than the ability itself. In 2008, researchers made a discovery that changed everything. They sequenced the slug's genome, and they found something that shouldn't be there. Plant genes. Not in the chloroplasts, in the slug's DNA, in its own genetic code. The slug had stolen genes from the algae. This process is called horizontal gene transfer, the movement of genetic material between organisms that aren't parent and offspring. It happens all the time in bacteria. Bacteria swap genes like trading cards. It's how antibiotic resistance spreads so quickly. But in complex organisms, animals, plants, it's supposed to be incredibly rare, maybe even impossible for something as large as a sea slug. And yet, Elysia had done it. At some point in its evolutionary history, genes from the algae it ate were incorporated into the slug's own DNA, passed down through generations, becoming a permanent part of what the slug is. These stolen genes encode the proteins that chloroplasts need to survive: repair enzymes, structural proteins, maintenance machinery. So when the slug eats algae and takes in chloroplasts, it's not just stealing the solar panels, it has the instruction manual, the ability to keep them running. It's genetic piracy, theft at the molecular level, and it's brilliant. But it raises profound questions. If an animal can take genes from a plant and use them, what even is the boundary between plant and animal? Elysia chlorotica lives in both worlds. It hatches as an animal, mobile, hunting, eating algae. Then it transforms, becomes something else, something that sits still, soaks up sun, and makes its own food. It's a metamorphosis as dramatic as a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, except the butterfly also becomes a tree. Scientists call it a solar-powered animal, but that feels inadequate. This isn't just an animal using a tool. This is an animal that has fundamentally rewritten its biology, that has crossed a line we thought was uncrossable. It's not quite an animal anymore, but it's not a plant either. It's something in between, something new. Now, you might be wondering, what does a weird green sea slug have to do with us? More than you think. Researchers are fascinated by Elysia because it represents something we've been trying to achieve for decades: synthetic biology. If we could understand exactly how this slug integrates foreign genetic material and keeps stolen organelles functioning, we could revolutionize biotechnology. Imagine if we could engineer human cells to incorporate chloroplasts, not to make us green, but to explore radical new approaches to energy at the cellular level. What if we could create crops that don't just photosynthesize more efficiently, but that could borrow genetic tricks from animals? Faster growth, better stress resistance, adaptability. What if we could design bacteria that combine plant and animal traits to produce medicines, clean pollution, or generate biofuels? Elysia chlorotica is proof that the boundaries between kingdoms of life aren't as solid as we thought. And if evolution figured out how to blur those lines, maybe we can too. There's also something deeper here, something philosophical. For all of human history, we've categorized life into neat boxes: plants, animals, fungi, bacteria. We teach children that plants make food from sunlight and animals eat other organisms. Simple, clear, fundamental. But Elysia chlorotica doesn't fit. It's both and neither. It reminds us that nature doesn't care about our categories. Evolution doesn't follow our rules. Life is messier, weirder, and more creative than any system we invent to contain it. The sea slug didn't set out to break the laws of biology. It just survived, adapted, found a solution that worked. And in doing so, it became something entirely new. Right now, somewhere off the coast of Massachusetts, there's a small green sea slug lying on a bed of algae. It's been there for weeks, maybe months, not eating, not hunting, just existing, soaking in the sunlight filtering through the water, quietly making glucose, living off photons. If you didn't know what you were looking at, you'd think it was a piece of seaweed, a fragment of plant, something green and still and simple. But it's not. It's an animal that rewrote its own genetic code, an evolutionary experiment that succeeded against impossible odds. And it raises a question that feels bigger the more you think about it. If life can be this flexible, if an animal can borrow abilities from plants, if the most fundamental categories of biology can blur and blend, then what else is possible? We spend so much time thinking about life as fixed. Humans are humans, dogs are dogs, plants are plants. But Elysia suggests something different, that life is fluid, that evolution is a conversation between organisms and their environment, and sometimes the solutions it finds are so strange, so unexpected, that they challenge everything we think we know. This slug didn't just survive, it transformed. It took something from another kingdom of life and made it its own. And maybe that's the real lesson here, that boundaries, biological, genetic, even conceptual, aren't as solid as they seem. That life, at its core, is about adaptation, about finding what works, about being willing to become something you weren't before. Elysia chlorotica will never know it's special. It doesn't care that it broke the rules of biology textbooks. It just lives, photosynthesizes, exists in a space between categories that we didn't even know was possible. And maybe that's the most profound thing of all, that somewhere in the shallow waters of the Atlantic, a tiny green slug is quietly proving that life is stranger, more flexible, and more beautiful than we ever imagined. Not by trying to be revolutionary, but by simply doing what it needed to do to survive, and in the process, becoming something entirely new. If the idea of an animal that photosynthesizes fascinates you, you're in the right place. This channel explores the most mind-blowing creatures on Earth, animals that break the rules, defy physics, and rewrite what we thought was possible. From frogs that freeze solid and come back to life, to bugs that survive forces that would crush a human, to microscopic creatures that can't be killed. Subscribe so you don't miss what we uncover next, because nature is full of impossible things, and we're just getting started. What animal should I cover next? Let me know in the comments below.